They thought turning off her oxygen while she gave birth would be the perfect crime. After all, her father was just a poor old man who couldn't do anything about it. But what they didn't know was that the poor old man owned half the world, and he was about to teach them what real power looked like. If you want to see how a trillionaire father destroys the people who tried to murder his daughter, hit that like button and subscribe. Because this story gets dark, it gets brutal, and justice has never been sweeter. Maria Walker's hands gripped the cold metal rails of the hospital bed so tightly her knuckles turned white. Another contraction ripped through her body like fire tearing through paper, and she gasped, her breath coming in short, desperate bursts. The private maternity suite was supposed to be luxurious. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. Soft classical music played from hidden speakers. The walls were painted in calming cream tones. Fresh flowers sat in an expensive vase on the nightstand. But none of it mattered. Maria had never felt more alone in her life. "Breathe, Mrs. Walker," the nurse said quietly, adjusting the IV drip. "Your contractions are getting closer together. The baby is coming soon." Maria nodded weakly, sweat beading on her forehead. Her dark hair clung to her damp skin. She tried to focus on breathing, on staying calm, but panic clawed at her chest. Where was Andrew? She had called him 12 times in the last 2 hours. 12. Each call went straight to voicemail. Each text message was left on read. He's busy, she told herself, trying to push down the rising fear. He's the CEO of Walker Industries. He has meetings, deals, responsibilities. But this was the birth of their child. Their daughter. Didn't that matter more than any business deal? Maria closed her eyes and forced herself to think of something else. Anything else. She let her mind drift back to the beginning, to when everything between them had been perfect. She remembered the first time she met Andrew Walker. It was at a charity gala 3 years ago. Maria had been working as an event coordinator, running around in a simple black dress, making sure everything went smoothly. She wasn't supposed to be noticed. She was staff, invisible to the wealthy elite who floated through the ballroom in designer gowns and tailored suits. But Andrew had noticed her. He was standing by the bar, tall and impossibly handsome in a midnight blue suit. His dark hair was perfectly styled. His smile was confident, charming. When their eyes met across the room, Maria's heart had skipped. He walked over to her like he had all the time in the world. "You've been running around all night making sure everyone else is taken care of," he said, his voice smooth and warm. "When do you get to enjoy the party?" Maria had laughed, surprised. "I'm working, Mr. Walker." "Andrew," he corrected, smiling. "And you know my name. That means I'm at a disadvantage." "Maria," she said shyly. "Maria Milen." "Maria," he repeated, like he was tasting the sound of it. "That's a beautiful name." They talked for 20 minutes, then an hour. By the end of the night, he had asked for her number. 6 months later, he proposed. It felt like a fairy tale. Andrew was powerful, wealthy, successful. He could have had anyone, but he chose her. Maria Milen, the daughter of a retired factory worker, a woman with no connections, no wealth, no status. Her father, Jorge, had been wary from the start. "Mija," he said quietly one evening when Maria came to visit him in his small apartment, "are you sure about this man?" "Daddy, I love him," Maria said, sitting beside her father on the worn couch. "He loves me too, I know he does." Jorge's weathered hands held hers gently. His eyes, still sharp despite his age, searched her face. "Love is not always enough, Maria. Power changes people. Wealth changes people." "Andrew isn't like that," Maria insisted. "He's kind. He's generous. He treats me like I'm the most important person in the world." Jorge had smiled sadly then, kissing her forehead. "I hope you're right, Mija. I hope you're right." Now, lying in the hospital bed, Maria wondered if her father had seen something she hadn't. Another contraction seized her body, and she cried out, her breath hitching. "Mrs. Walker, you're doing great," the nurse said, checking the monitors. "Your baby's heartbeat is strong." Maria's hand moved to her swollen belly, feeling the life inside her. Her daughter, her little girl. She had already chosen a name. Sophia Elena Walker. "Just hold on a little longer, baby," Maria whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Daddy will be here soon, I promise." But even as she said it, doubt gnawed at her. The truth was, things had changed between her and Andrew over the past year. He had become distant, cold. He worked late almost every night. When he was home, he barely looked at her. Conversations were clipped, functional. Maria told herself it was stress. The company was expanding. There were mergers, acquisitions, million-dollar deals. But then there were the rumors. Whispers at company events, pitying looks from Andrew's colleagues' wives. Maria had overheard a conversation once, two women talking in the bathroom at a fundraiser. "I heard he's been seeing someone." "Laura Jordan, right, that VP from marketing. She's gorgeous and ambitious, Andrew's type." "What about his wife?" "Who, Maria? She's sweet, but she's not exactly one of us, is she?" Maria had stood frozen in the bathroom stall, her heart shattering. When she confronted Andrew that night, he had laughed it off. "People love to gossip, Maria," he said dismissively, loosening his tie. "Laura is a colleague, nothing more." "Then why are people talking about you too?" "Because they're bored," Andrew snapped, irritation flashing in his eyes. "Because they have nothing better to do than spread lies. I thought you trusted me." Maria had backed down, guilt flooding her. "I do trust you, I'm sorry, I just—" "You just what?" Andrew's voice was cold now. "You think I'd throw away everything we have for some office affair?" "No, of course not." But the doubt remained. Now, as another wave of pain crashed over her, Maria reached for her phone with trembling fingers. She dialed Andrew's number one more time. It rang once. Twice. 3 times. Voicemail. "Andrew," she whispered into the phone, her voice breaking. "Please, I need you. The baby is coming, I'm scared. Please come." She ended the call and let the phone fall onto the bed beside her. The nurse squeezed her hand gently. "Is there anyone else we can call? Your father, a friend?" Maria shook her head. "My father, he's old, he doesn't need to worry, and I don't want to bother him." The truth was, Maria hadn't told her father how bad things had gotten with Andrew. Jorge lived simply in his small apartment across the city. He survived on his modest pension. Maria sent him money when she could, even though he always protested. She didn't want him to see her like this, alone, abandoned, broken. The contractions were coming faster now, each one more intense than the last. "Mrs. Walker, it's almost time," the nurse said urgently, moving to adjust the bed. "I'm going to call the doctor." Maria's vision blurred with tears. She tried to breathe, tried to stay calm, but terror consumed her. What if something went wrong? What if she couldn't do this alone? And then, through the haze of pain and fear, she heard it. The sound of the door opening. Relief flooded through her like warm light. He came. Andrew came. Maria turned her head toward the door, tears streaming down her face, ready to forgive everything, ready to believe in them again. But when she saw who walked in, her blood turned to ice. Andrew stood in the doorway, perfectly dressed in a charcoal gray suit. His dark hair was styled flawlessly. His expression was cold, detached. And beside him, her hand resting possessively on his arm, was Laura Jordan. Laura, the woman from the rumors, the VP of marketing, the woman Andrew swore meant nothing. She was stunning. Blonde hair cascaded over her shoulders in perfect waves. Her red dress hugged her body like it was designed specifically for her. Diamond earrings glittered in the fluorescent light. And her eyes were sharp, calculating, cruel. "Andrew," Maria's voice came out as barely a whisper. What is she doing here?" Andrew didn't answer immediately. He checked his watch, like he had somewhere more important to be. Laura's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hello, Maria," Laura said softly, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "You look uncomfortable." Maria's chest tightened. Pain exploded through her body again, but this time it wasn't just physical. This was betrayal. Raw, undeniable betrayal. "Andrew, please," Maria gasped, her hands gripping the bed rails. I can't breathe properly, please, I need you." Andrew's eyes finally met hers, and in that moment Maria saw the truth. There was no love there. No concern. Nothing. Laura moved closer to the bed, her heels clicking against the sterile floor. She glanced at the machines surrounding Maria, her gaze landing on the oxygen monitor. "She looks weak," Laura murmured, just loud enough for Andrew to hear. "Do you think she'll make it through this?" Maria's heart pounded. What are you talking about?" Andrew stepped forward, his hands in his pockets. "Maria, there's something you should know." "What?" Maria's voice cracked. "The prenup you signed," Andrew said calmly, clinically. "Do you remember what it said?" Maria's mind raced. The prenup. Yes, she had signed it before they married. Andrew's lawyers had insisted. It was standard procedure for someone of his wealth, they said. I don't. If you die," Andrew continued, his voice devoid of emotion, "everything transfers to me. Full control, no complications, no messy divorces, clean." The words hit Maria like a physical blow. You can't mean." Laura's fingers traced along the oxygen machine, her touch light, almost playful. "It's really quite simple," Laura said, her smile widening. "You're not needed anymore, Maria, you never were." Maria tried to scream, tried to call for help, but another contraction tore through her, stealing her breath. Laura's hand moved to the oxygen valve. "Andrew, stop her," Maria begged, her vision swimming. "Please, the baby." Andrew turned away. He turned away. And Laura, with one slow, deliberate twist, turned off the oxygen. The hiss of life-giving air vanished. Maria's lungs burned, her chest convulsed. She clawed at the oxygen mask, gasping, choking. Her baby kicked frantically inside her. "Andrew," she screamed, but no sound came out. The room spun. Darkness crept in from the edges of her vision. Laura and Andrew stood watching. Waiting. And Maria realized in that horrible, suffocating moment that they wanted her to die. The silence was the worst part. Maria had imagined death would be loud, screaming, sirens, chaos. But as the oxygen stopped flowing into her mask, the world became eerily quiet. She could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. She could hear the soft rustle of Laura's red dress. She could hear Andrew's breath, calm and steady, while hers was dying. Her hands clawed at the oxygen mask, fingers trembling, desperate. Her chest heaved violently, searching for air that wasn't there. Her baby kicked frantically inside her, as if sensing the danger, fighting to survive. "No, please, not like this." Laura stood over her, one perfectly manicured hand still resting on the oxygen valve she had just turned off. The smile on her face was small, almost gentle, like she was doing Maria a favor. Maria tried to speak, tried to scream, but her throat was closed, her lungs burning like they were filled with fire. Tears streamed down her face, hot and desperate. She looked at Andrew, her husband, the father of her child, silently begging him with her eyes. "Please help me, save us." Andrew stood near the door, his back partially turned. His jaw was tight, his hands buried deep in his pockets. He wasn't looking at her. He was staring at the floor like this was a business meeting he didn't want to attend. "Andrew," Maria's voice came out as a broken whisper, barely audible. "Please." He flinched just slightly, but he didn't turn around. "She's still conscious," Laura said, her tone almost curious. She tilted her head, studying Maria like she was a specimen under glass. I thought it would be faster." Maria's vision started to blur. The edges of the room darkened, closing in like a tunnel. Her baby kicked again, weaker this time. "Sophia, my baby girl, I'm so sorry." Laura walked slowly around the bed, her heels clicking rhythmically against the floor. She picked up Maria's phone from the bedside table, glanced at the screen, and smiled. 12 missed calls to Andrew, Laura said, scrolling through the call log. "How pathetic. Did you really think he'd come running to you?" Maria's chest convulsed. She gasped soundlessly, her body arching off the bed. "He stopped loving you months ago, Maria," Laura continued, her voice soft, almost kind. "Maybe he never really loved you at all. You were just convenient, a nice story. The CEO and the poor girl, very romantic." She set the phone down and moved closer, her face inches from Maria's. "But stories end, sweetheart, and this is yours." Maria's hand shot out weakly, grabbing Laura's wrist. Her grip was feeble, trembling, but it was all the strength she had left. Laura looked down at Maria's hand with disgust, then yanked her arm away. "Don't touch me," she hissed, her mask of kindness slipping for just a moment. "You're already gone, you just don't know it yet." Maria's mind was fragmenting, thoughts scattering like broken glass. She thought of her father, Jorge, his kind eyes, his rough, weathered hands holding hers when she was a little girl. "Daddy, I'm sorry, I should have listened to you." She thought of the life she'd imagined with Andrew, the family dinners, the laughter, growing old together. It had all been a lie. She thought of her baby, Sophia, the daughter she would never hold, never sing to, never watch grow up. "I failed you, I'm so sorry, baby. Mommy failed you." Another contraction tore through her, vicious and unrelenting. Her body was trying to give birth even as it was dying. The pain was unbearable, a fire consuming her from the inside out. "Andrew," Laura said, turning to look at him, "how much longer do you want to wait?" Andrew finally lifted his head. His eyes met Maria's for one brief, devastating moment. There was no regret there, no guilt, just cold calculation. "Give it another minute," he said flatly. "We need to make sure." Maria's heart shattered. He wasn't going to save her, he was timing her death. Laura laughed softly, a sound like wind chimes in a graveyard. "You're colder than I thought, darling, I like it." She moved back to the oxygen machine, checking the valve to ensure it was fully closed. Then she glanced at the heart monitor, watching Maria's vitals drop. "Her heart rate is slowing," Laura observed clinically. "Blood pressure dropping, it won't be long now." Maria's hand slid off the bed rails, her strength gone. Her vision was almost completely dark now, just a pinpoint of light remaining. She could barely feel her body anymore. Everything was numb, distant. "This is it, this is how I die." But then, through the fog of dying consciousness, she heard something. Footsteps running. The door burst open. "What the hell is going on in here?" a voice shouted. It was a nurse, not the same one from before. This one was older, her face sharp and alert. Her eyes swept the room, landing immediately on the oxygen machine. "The oxygen is off," she screamed. "Who turned off the oxygen?" Laura stepped back smoothly, her expression shifting instantly to one of shock and concern. "I don't know," Laura said, her voice trembling with false panic. "We just got here and found her like this." The nurse didn't waste time responding. She lunged for the oxygen valve, twisting it back on. The hiss of air returned and the nurse grabbed the oxygen mask, pressing it firmly over Maria's face. "Breathe, Mrs. Walker, breathe." Maria's lungs seized, trying to pull in air, but it felt like breathing through concrete. Her body wouldn't respond. Everything was shutting down. "Code Blue, I need a team in here now," the nurse yelled into the hallway. Within seconds, the room exploded into chaos. Doctors and nurses flooded in. Machines beeped wildly. Hands pressed on Maria's chest. Someone was shouting orders. The defibrillator cart was wheeled in. Through the chaos, Maria saw Laura and Andrew backing toward the door. Laura's face was calm, composed. She slipped her hand into Andrew's. Andrew's expression was unreadable, but he didn't look afraid. He looked annoyed, like his plan had been interrupted. "Sir, ma'am, you need to leave," one of the doctors said sharply, not looking at them. "Family only, and we need space." "Of course," Andrew said smoothly, his CEO voice sliding into place effortlessly. "We'll be right outside. Please save my wife." The words sounded right, concerned, loving. But Maria knew the truth. As they walked out, Laura glanced back one last time. Their eyes met. And Laura smiled. A small, secret smile that said, "You're already dead. You just don't know it yet." The door closed behind them. "BP is crashing. Baby's in distress. We need to deliver now. Prep for emergency C-section." Maria's world spun. The voices around her became distorted, echoing like they were underwater. She felt hands on her body, moving her, cutting her hospital gown away. Cold instruments touched her skin. "Sophia, please live. Even if I don't, please." Her baby kicked one more time, weak, fatting. And then Maria felt it, the final surrender, her body letting go. The darkness swallowed her completely. The last thing she heard was the long, steady beep of a flatline. Hours later, in the ICU waiting room, Andrew sat with his legs crossed, scrolling through his phone. Laura sat beside him, her head resting on his shoulder. "Do you think they'll ask questions?" Laura murmured. "No," Andrew said confidently. "Complications during childbirth happen all the time, tragic but not suspicious. And if they do, investigate. There's nothing to find. You turned the oxygen back on before anyone saw. The nurse will assume it was a malfunction. Medical equipment fails." Laura smiled. "You've thought of everything." "I always do." The automatic doors at the end of the hallway slid open. An older man walked in slowly, his steps heavy, deliberate. He wore a worn brown jacket, faded jeans, and a cap that had seen better days. His face was weathered, lined with age and hard work. He looked like a retired laborer, unremarkable, powerless. Andrew barely glanced at him. But the man's eyes, sharp, cold, and filled with something ancient and dangerous, locked onto Andrew. The man stopped at the nurse's station. "I'm here for Maria Walker," he said quietly. "I'm her father." The nurse's expression softened with sympathy. "Mr. Millen, I'm so sorry. Your daughter is in critical condition. The doctors are doing everything they can." Jorge Millen nodded slowly. "Can I see her?" "Not yet, but soon. Please have a seat." Jorge turned toward the waiting room. His eyes landed on Andrew and Laura, still sitting close together, whispering. Andrew noticed him finally and straightened slightly, putting on a mask of grief. "Mr. Millen," Andrew said, standing and extending his hand. "I'm so sorry. The doctors are doing everything." Jorge looked at Andrew's hand. He didn't take it. Instead, he studied Andrew's face, with an intensity that made even the CEO uncomfortable. "Where were you?" Jorge asked quietly. Andrew blinked. "I'm sorry." "When my daughter was dying," Jorge said, his voice steady but edged with steel. "Where were you?" "I came as soon as I heard." "No," Jorge's voice cut through the lie like a blade. "You were here, weren't you?" Andrew's jaw tightened. Laura stood up, stepping forward with her most charming smile. "Mr. Millen, I understand you're upset, but Andrew has been devastated." Jorge's eyes shifted to Laura, and in that moment something changed in the air, something cold, something final. "Who are you?" Jorge asked. "I'm Laura Jordan, a colleague." "Get away from my daughter's husband." The words were quiet, but they carried weight, command. Laura's smile faltered. Jorge turned back to Andrew. "I will see my daughter now, and then Mr. Walker." His eyes were black ice. "We will talk." He walked past them toward the ICU. Andrew exhaled slowly, his confidence returning. "He's just a scared old man," he muttered to Laura. "He can't do anything." Laura nodded, but something uneasy settled in her chest. Inside the ICU, Jorge stood at Maria's bedside. She was pale, unconscious, hooked to a dozen machines. Her chest rose and fell with the help of a ventilator. Her baby had been delivered by emergency C-section and was fighting for life in the NICU. Jorge took his daughter's hand gently. A single tear rolled down his weathered cheek. And then he pulled out his phone. He dialed a number he hadn't called in 15 years. It rang once. "Sir," a voice answered immediately, crisp, professional, ready. Jorge's voice was calm, emotionless. "Activate Black Protocol." "Understood, all assets." "Everything." "Target Andrew Walker, Walker Industries, and everyone who helped him." There was a pause. "Sir, are you certain?" Jorge looked at his daughter's broken body. "Burn it all down." He ended the call. The Trillionaire had returned. Jorge Malin stood at his daughter's bedside for 3 hours without moving. The machines beeped steadily around him. The ventilator hissed with mechanical rhythm, breathing for Maria because she couldn't breathe for herself. Her face was pale, almost translucent under the harsh hospital lights. Tubes ran from her arms. Monitors tracked every fragile heartbeat. She looked small, broken. Jorge's hand trembled as it held hers. A young doctor entered, clipboard in hand, exhausted eyes scanning the charts. He barely glanced at Jorge. "Are you family?" the doctor asked, his tone professionally detached. "I'm her father." The doctor nodded absently. "Mr. Malin, your daughter suffered severe oxygen deprivation during labor. We managed to deliver the baby, but Maria went into cardiac arrest. We revived her, but she's in a coma. The next 48 hours are critical." Jorge's jaw tightened. "And my granddaughter?" "She's in the NICU, premature, underweight, but fighting. She has a chance." "A chance," Jorge repeated quietly. The doctor shifted uncomfortably. "I know this is difficult, Mr. Malin. Do you have insurance information? We'll need to discuss payment options for the extended ICU stay, and—" "Money is not a concern." The doctor blinked. "I understand, but the costs can be substantial. We have social workers who can help you apply for." "I said money is not a concern," Jorge interrupted, his voice still quiet but edged with something that made the doctor pause. "Of course, I'll have the billing department contact you." The doctor made a note on his clipboard and left. Jorge watched him go, then turned back to Maria. He pulled a worn chair closer to the bed and sat down heavily. His weathered hands, marked with decades of labor, gently brushed a strand of hair from Maria's forehead. "Mija," he whispered, "my little girl." His mind drifted back, 28 years, a lifetime ago. He remembered the day Maria was born. His wife, Elena, had died bringing their daughter into the world. Complications, blood loss. The doctors had done everything they could. Jorge had stood in a hospital room much like this one, holding a tiny newborn baby girl, and made a choice. He had been Jorge Malin then, too, but not the Jorge Malin the world knew now. Back then he was Jorge Malin, founder and CEO of Malin Global Enterprises, a financial empire that spanned continents, technology, real estate, energy, defense contracts. His wealth was measured in numbers most people couldn't comprehend. He had built it from nothing: immigrant parents, a childhood in poverty, brilliant mind, ruthless ambition. By 40, he owned more than small countries. And then Elena died. Standing in that delivery room, holding Maria while his wife's body grew cold, Jorge realized something that shattered him. His daughter would never have a normal life. She would be a target for kidnappers, gold diggers, people who would use her, manipulate her, hurt her just to get to his wealth. She would never know real friendship, real love, real trust. She would live in a gilded cage. So Jorge made a decision that most people would call insane. He disappeared. He transferred his assets to a network of shell companies and blind trusts, managed by a small circle of people he trusted with his life. He appointed a CEO to run Milen Global publicly, while he pulled strings from the shadows. And Jorge Milen, Trillionaire, became Jorge Milen, retired factory worker. He moved to a modest apartment, drove an old car, wore simple clothes, lived on what appeared to be a pension. He raised Maria in simplicity, in normalcy. She went to public schools, had birthday parties at the park, learned to save money, understood the value of hard work. She never knew. She never knew her father owned the buildings she walked past, the companies whose products she used, the banks that held mortgages for half the city. She grew up humble, kind, grateful. Everything Jorge wanted for her. And she was happy. Until Andrew Walker. Jorge's hands clenched into fists. He had known. The moment Maria introduced Andrew to him, Jorge had known. He'd had Andrew investigated within 24 hours, dug into his finances, his business practices, his personal life. Andrew Walker was a predator, leveraged buyouts, hostile takeovers. He crushed competitors without mercy. His relationships followed the same pattern: use, extract, discard. Jorge had tried to warn Maria gently, but she was in love, and love made people blind. So Jorge had waited, watched, prepared. He'd placed tracking on Andrew's communications, monitored his financial moves, even planted people inside Walker Industries to feed him information. And when the reports started coming in about Laura Jordan, the affair, the private dinners, the hotel rooms, Jorge had begun building his case. But he'd underestimated Andrew's cruelty. He never imagined Andrew would try to murder Maria. His daughter, his little girl. Jorge stood slowly, releasing Maria's hand. His face was calm, but his eyes had changed. They were no longer the tired, sad eyes of an old man. They were the eyes of a man who had built empires and destroyed competitors. The eyes of a predator. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. Names most people would recognize: CEOs, politicians, judges, media moguls. He dialed. "Marcus," Jorge said when the line connected. "It's time." Marcus Chen, his most trusted advisor, had been waiting for this call for 15 years. "Sir, what do you need?" "Everything. I want full reactivation. All assets, all personnel, full operational control." There was a pause. "Are you certain? Once you do this, there's no going back. Your anonymity is irrelevant. My daughter is in a coma because her husband tried to kill her." Another pause, longer this time. "Understood," Marcus said, his voice hardening. "Give me 6 hours. I'll have preliminary reports ready." "Make it 3. "Yes, sir." Jorge ended the call and made another, then another. Within 20 minutes, he had activated a network that had been dormant for over a decade. Lawyers, investigators, financial analysts, security teams. The machinery of power grinding back to life. A nurse entered to check Maria's vitals. She glanced at Jorge with sympathy. "Can I get you anything, sir? Coffee, something to eat?" "No, thank you." She hesitated. "Sir, you should rest. You've been here for hours." Jorge didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on his phone as messages started flooding in. The nurse left quietly. By midnight, Jorge had the first reports. Walker Industries was overextended. Andrew had made aggressive expansions in the last year, leveraging debt to acquire 3 smaller companies. His credit lines were stretched thin. Laura Jordan had been promoted to VP of Marketing 8 months ago. Her salary had tripled. She'd been given stock options worth millions. The prenuptial agreement Maria had signed was ironclad. If Maria died, everything, her assets, her share of Andrew's wealth, her insurance policies, went directly to Andrew. And there was security footage. The hospital had cameras in every hallway. Jorge's people had already secured the recordings before they could be erased or lost. Clear footage of Andrew and Laura entering Maria's room together. Clear footage of them leaving 20 minutes later, just before the code blue was called. And most damning of all, footage from inside the room itself. The hospital administration didn't even know these cameras existed. They were part of a building-wide security system installed by a company Jorge owned. High-definition video of Laura's hand on the oxygen valve. Video of her turning it off. Video of Andrew watching. Video of them talking while Maria suffocated. Jorge watched the footage 3 times, his expression never changing. Then he forwarded it to his legal team with a single instruction: prepare criminal charges, murder and attempted murder. But that wasn't enough. Criminal charges would take months, maybe years. Andrew had money, he'd hire the best lawyers, he'd delay, appeal, make deals. No. Jorge wanted something more immediate. He wanted destruction. At 2 a.m., Jorge made a call to the Cayman Islands. Buy every outstanding debt Walker Industries owes, he said simply. All of it, I don't care what it costs. Sir, that's over $400 million. I'm aware. It will take. You have 12 hours. By dawn, Jorge owned Andrew's debts. The banks, the investors, the credit lines, all of them had been quietly purchased through intermediary shell companies. Andrew didn't know it yet, but he was now financially owned by the man whose daughter he tried to murder. Jorge made another call, this one to a federal prosecutor he'd helped fund her campaign 8 years ago. I have evidence of attempted murder, Jorge said. High-definition video. I'm sending it to you now. Mr. Millen, the prosecutor's voice was shocked. I thought you were retired. I was, now I'm not. Who's the perpetrator? Andrew Walker, CEO of Walker Industries. A sharp intake of breath. That's a major case. Yes, and you're going to prosecute it. Sir, I'll need to review the evidence, coordinate with. You have 48 hours to bring charges or I'll release the video to every media outlet in the country and make sure everyone knows you had the evidence and did nothing. Silence. Understood, the prosecutor said quietly. Jorge ended the call. He returned to Maria's bedside and sat down again, taking her hand. I should have told you the truth, Major, he whispered. I should have told you who I really was. Maybe then you wouldn't have felt you needed to marry someone like him. Maybe you would have known your worth. A tear slid down his weathered cheek. I failed you, but I won't fail you again. His phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Walker Industries board meeting scheduled for tomorrow, 2 p.m. Andrew presenting Q4 results. We'll be celebrating projected growth. Jorge stared at the message. Andrew was celebrating. While Maria lay in a coma. While his newborn daughter fought for life. Andrew was celebrating. Jorge's jaw clenched. He typed a response, I'll be there. Across the city, in his luxury penthouse, Andrew Walker poured champagne into 2 crystal glasses. Laura emerged from the bedroom wearing one of his silk robes, her hair loose around her shoulders. Is it done? She asked. The lawyer called an hour ago, Andrew said, handing her a glass. The prenup is clear. If Maria doesn't wake up, everything transfers to me within 30 days. And if she does wake up? Andrew's smile was cold. The doctor said if she survives, there will likely be brain damage, permanent disability. She'll need constant care. Which you'll provide, Laura said, understanding. In a private facility, very expensive, very isolated. She'll be completely dependent on me. Laura sipped her champagne. You're more ruthless than I thought. I told you, I didn't build my empire by being sentimental. They touched glasses. To new beginnings, Laura said. To power, Andrew replied. They drank, unaware that their conversation was being recorded by the phone Andrew had left on the counter. The phone that had been remotely activated by Jorge's security team. Every word, every confession. All documented. In the hospital, Jorge received the audio file. He listened to it once. Then he smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who had just been given the weapon he needed to destroy his enemy completely. Sleep well, Andrew Walker, Jorge whispered to the night. Tomorrow your empire falls. The Walker Industries boardroom occupied the entire top floor of a gleaming downtown skyscraper. Floor to ceiling, windows offered a panoramic view of the city. A massive mahogany table stretched the length of the room, surrounded by leather chairs that cost more than most people's cars. Andrew Walker stood at the head of the table, confidence radiating from every pore. His tailored navy suit was immaculate. His smile was sharp, victorious. Around the table sat the board of directors, 12 powerful executives who controlled billions in assets. They watched Andrew with expressions ranging from admiration to envy. Ladies and gentlemen, Andrew said, gesturing to the presentation screen behind him. Q4 exceeded all projections, revenue up 32%. Our acquisition of Tech Venture Solutions has positioned us to dominate the market for the next decade. Polite applause rippled through the room. Which brings me to the next phase of our expansion, Andrew continued, clicking to the next slide. I'm proposing we leverage our current success to acquire. The boardroom doors opened. Andrew paused, irritation flickering across his face. We're in the middle of a presentation. Whatever this is can. He stopped. A man walked in slowly, deliberately. He wore an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than Andrew's car. His silver hair was perfectly styled. His shoes were handcrafted Italian leather. But it was his eyes that made the room go silent. Cold, calculating, absolutely in control. Behind him walked 3 people. A woman in a sharp business suit carrying a briefcase, a man in an expensive suit who screamed lawyer, and a younger man with a tablet and an expression that said he was very good at his job. Andrew's eyes narrowed. Who the hell are you? The man smiled. It was not a friendly smile. My name is Jorge Millen, he said quietly, and I own this company. The room erupted. That's impossible. One board member sputtered. Security, another shouted. Andrew laughed, but it sounded forced. This is ridiculous, someone call. Sit down, Mr. Walker, Jorge said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried absolute authority. The woman with the briefcase stepped forward, pulling out documents and distributing them around the table. What you're holding, Jorge said calmly, are the debt instruments for Walker Industries. Over $400 million in outstanding loans, credit lines, and investor notes. As of 72 hours ago, I purchased all of them. A board member scanned the documents, his face going pale. These are legitimate. I also purchased controlling shares from your 3 largest investors, Jorge continued. As of this morning, I own 68% of this company. Andrew's confident smile crumbled. You can't. I did. Jorge walked slowly toward Andrew. You should sit down, Mr. Walker. We have a great deal to discuss. I don't know who you are or what kind of scam you're running, Andrew said, his voice rising, but I will not be. Your wife is my daughter. The words landed like a bomb. Andrew froze. Maria Walker, Jorge said softly, born Maria Millen, the woman you tried to murder 3 days ago. The room went deathly silent. I don't know what you're talking about, Andrew said, but his voice shook. Jorge nodded to the man with the tablet. The man pressed a button, and the large presentation screen flickered to life. Hospital footage appeared. Date and time stamp in the corner. Maria's hospital room. The board members leaned forward, confusion on their faces. Then Andrew walked into frame, and beside him Laura Jordan. "Oh God," someone whispered. On screen, Laura approached the oxygen machine. Her hand reached for the valve. "Turn it off," Jorge said quietly. The video continued. Laura's fingers twisted the valve. The oxygen stopped. Maria's body convulsed. Andrew turned away. Several board members gasped. One woman covered her mouth, horror in her eyes. "That's not," Andrew started. "That's not what it looks like," Jorge finished. "Then perhaps you can explain what it is." Andrew's face had gone white. "Where did you get that? That's private medical." "I own the security company that installed the cameras," Jorge said simply. "I own a lot of things, Mr. Walker. I've just been very quiet about it." He gestured to the lawyer, who stepped forward with another set of documents. "These are criminal complaints I filed this morning," Jorge said. "Attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and," he glanced at the screen, "evidence tampering, as you'll notice the timestamp showing you leaving the room 20 minutes before the nurses arrived." Andrew grabbed the edge of the table for support. "This is insane. You're insane. I'll fight this. I'll." "You'll what?" Jorge's voice was ice. "Hire lawyers. I've already contacted the 5 best criminal defense firms in the state. They've all declined to represent you." "You can't do that." "I can, and I did." Jorge moved closer, his voice dropping to a whisper only Andrew could hear. "You tried to kill my daughter. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences?" Andrew's phone buzzed, then again and again. He glanced at it, news alerts. Breaking. CEO Andrew Walker under investigation for attempted murder. Walker Industries stock plummets as criminal charges surface. Hospital footage shows CEO's wife nearly killed during labor. Andrew's hand shook. "How did the media?" "I sent them the footage an hour ago," Jorge said calmly, "along with your recorded confession." "What confession? I never." Jorge nodded to the man with the tablet again. Audio played through the boardroom speakers. Andrew's voice crystal clear. "The lawyer called an hour ago. The prenup is clear. If Maria doesn't wake up, everything transfers to me within 30 days. Laura's voice, "And if she does wake up?" Andrew's voice, "The doctors said if she survives there will likely be brain damage. She'll need constant care. I'll provide it, in a private facility, very expensive, very isolated." The boardroom was silent, except for the damning audio. When it finished, a board member stood up abruptly. "I resign, effective immediately." "As do I," another said. I can't be associated with this," a third stammered, gathering her things. Within minutes, 8 of the 12 board members had left. Andrew stood alone at the head of the table, his empire crumbling around him. The boardroom doors burst open again. Police officers strode in, badges visible. "Andrew Walker, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder and fraud." Andrew stumbled backward. No, this isn't." They didn't give him time to finish. Hands grabbed his arms. Handcuffs clicked into place. "You have the right to remain silent." Andrew's eyes found Jorge as they led him away. "You won't get away with this. I'll fight. I'll." "You already lost," Jorge said quietly. As they dragged Andrew out, he screamed, "Where's Laura? Laura?" Laura Jordan was arrested in the Walker Industries parking garage, trying to flee with 2 suitcases full of cash and jewelry. She screamed, she cried. She claimed she was innocent, that Andrew had manipulated her. The police showed her the hospital footage. She went silent. The trial began 3 months later. The prosecution had everything: video evidence, audio confessions, financial records showing Andrew's motive, medical testimony about Maria's injuries. Andrew's defense tried everything. They claimed the video was doctored, that the audio was taken out of context, that Maria's oxygen failure was a medical accident. But they couldn't explain why Andrew and Laura had been in the room. They couldn't explain the recorded confession. They couldn't explain the prenup that would make Andrew a fortune if Maria died. On the fourth day of trial, Maria testified. She had been in a coma for 6 weeks. When she woke, the doctors said it was a miracle, no brain damage, full recovery expected. But the emotional scars ran deep. Maria entered the courtroom in a wheelchair, though she could walk now. She wanted the jury to see what Andrew had done to her. She wore a simple blue dress. Her hair was pulled back. Her face was pale but determined. Andrew wouldn't look at her. "Mrs. Walker," the prosecutor said gently, "can you tell us what happened on the day you went into labor?" Maria's voice was soft but steady. "I called my husband 12 times. I needed him. I was scared. And when he arrived, he brought his mistress." Maria's eyes finally found Andrew. "He brought the woman he'd been sleeping with while I was pregnant with his child." "What happened next?" Maria took a breath. "She turned off my oxygen and my husband. He watched. He watched me die and he did nothing." The courtroom was silent. "I remember thinking," Maria continued, her voice breaking, "that I would never hold my daughter, that she would grow up without a mother because her father wanted money more than he wanted us." Tears slid down her cheeks. "But I survived. We both survived, and I'm here to make sure he never hurts anyone again." The jury was crying. The judge's eyes were wet. Andrew stared at the table. The prosecutor played the audio confession. Andrew's voice filled the courtroom, cold and calculating, planning his wife's death like a business transaction. When it ended, the prosecutor said simply, "The prosecution rests." The jury deliberated for 45 minutes. Guilty on all counts. Andrew collapsed in his chair. Laura tried separately, received the same verdict. The judge looked at Andrew with undisguised contempt. "You are sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole." The gavel fell. The courtroom erupted in applause. Andrew was led away in chains, his empire destroyed, his freedom gone, his future a cell. Laura screamed as they took her away. "This isn't fair, he made me do it, Andrew made me." But no one was listening. Outside the courthouse, Maria stood with her father's arm around her. Reporters swarmed, shouting questions. "Mrs. Walker, how do you feel about the verdict? Will you divorce Andrew? What's next for you?" Maria raised a hand, and the crowd quieted. "I feel," she paused, searching for words, "I feel free. For the first time in years, I feel free." "And your daughter?" Maria's face softened. "Sophia is healthy, strong, beautiful. She's everything I hoped she would be." "What will you do now?" Maria looked at her father. Jorge squeezed her hand gently. "I'm going to heal," Maria said. "I'm going to be the mother my daughter deserves, and I'm going to make sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else." "One more question. Who is the man who helped you? The one who bought Walker Industries?" Jorge stepped forward slightly. "I'm her father," he said simply, "and I will always protect my daughter." The cameras flashed. Maria smiled. They walked away together, father and daughter, survivors both. That night, Maria sat in the nursery she'd designed in her father's penthouse, a room she'd never seen before the trial. Her father had bought the entire building. Of course he had. She held Sophia, who was 6 months old now, healthy and perfect. "Your grandfather is full of surprises," Maria whispered to her daughter. Sophia cooed softly. Maria's phone buzzed. A message from the prosecutor. Laura Jordan tried to make a deal, offered to testify against Andrew for a reduced sentence, We declined. Justice was already served. Maria deleted the message. She didn't want revenge anymore. She wanted peace. But as she rocked her daughter, tears suddenly came, not tears of sadness. Tears of rage, of grief, of all the trauma she'd been holding inside. Her body shook. Sophia started to cry. Jorge appeared in the doorway immediately. Mija. Maria couldn't speak. The weight of everything, the betrayal, the near-death, the trial, the cameras, the world watching her most painful moments, it all crashed down at once. She handed Sophia to her father and collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. Jorge knelt beside her, one arm holding his granddaughter, the other wrapped around his daughter. "Let it out," he whispered. "You're safe now, let it out." And Maria did. She cried for the woman she'd been, for the trust she'd lost, for the life she'd almost lost, for everything. Jorge held her while she broke. Because sometimes, even after justice is served, the pain remains. And healing takes more than a verdict. It takes time. 6 months after the trial, Maria stood in front of a mirror in her father's penthouse, barely recognizing the woman staring back at her. She looked different, stronger. Her hair was shorter now, cut to her shoulders in a way that felt like shedding old skin. Her eyes were clearer. The constant fear that had lived in them during her marriage was gone. She wore a simple white blouse and jeans. No designer labels. No jewelry except for a delicate necklace her father had given her, a small pendant engraved with Sophia's name. The wedding ring Andrew had given her sat in a drawer somewhere, forgotten. Behind her, Sophia babbled happily in her playpen, surrounded by colorful toys. She was almost a year old now, healthy and thriving. Her dark curls bounced as she reached for a stuffed elephant, giggling when she finally grabbed it. "Mama," Sophia squealed, holding up the toy triumphantly. Maria's heart melted. She turned from the mirror and scooped her daughter into her arms, kissing her chubby cheeks. "Yes, baby girl, you got it. You're so strong." Sophia giggled and grabbed Maria's nose. The door opened, and Jorge walked in carrying a tray with coffee and pastries. "I thought you might be hungry," he said, setting the tray on the coffee table. Maria settled onto the couch with Sophia in her lap. "Thank you, Daddy." Jorge sat beside them, his weathered face softening as he watched his granddaughter. Sophia immediately reached for him, and he took her gently, making silly faces that made her laugh. Maria poured herself coffee, watching them. "We need to talk." Jorge looked up, concern flickering in his eyes. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, I need to know the truth, all of it." Jorge was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "What do you want to know?" "Everything, who you really are, how you could afford all of this." Maria gestured around the luxurious penthouse. "The lawyers, the investigators, buying Andrew's entire company. Daddy, I'm not stupid. Retired factory workers don't do these things." Jorge bounced Sophia gently on his knee, buying time. Finally, he sighed. "You're right, I wasn't completely honest with you. So tell me now." And he did. Jorge told her everything. About Milen Global Enterprises. About the empire he'd built from nothing. About becoming one of the wealthiest men in the world by 40. About losing her mother and making the choice to give Maria a normal life. "I wanted you to know real kindness," Jorge said quietly. "Real friendship, real love, not people who wanted you for what you could give them." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "But I married Andrew anyway. I married exactly the kind of person you tried to protect me from." "That wasn't your fault, Mija. Andrew was good at hiding what he was. You saw it, you warned me. And you needed to make your own choices. That's what love is. Letting people make their own mistakes and being there when they fall." Maria wiped her eyes. "I feel so stupid. All those years struggling to send you money, worrying about you living in that tiny apartment." were some of the happiest years of my life, Jorge interrupted gently. Because you cared, because you have a good heart. That apartment, that simple life, it was real, Maria. My love for you was always real. Sophia reached for Maria, sensing her mother's distress. Maria took her daughter, holding her close. I'm filing for divorce, Maria said after a moment. I know, my lawyers have already prepared the papers. Of course they have. Maria managed a small smile. Will you help me with something else? Anything. I want to do something meaningful with my life, with what happened to me. Jorge leaned forward. Tell me. 3 months later, Maria stood in front of a small community center in a modest neighborhood across town. The building was newly renovated, painted in warm, welcoming colors. A sign above the door read, Sophia's Haven Support for Survivors. Inside, the space was designed to feel safe. Comfortable couches, soft lighting, private counseling rooms, a children's playroom where survivors could bring their kids while they attended support groups. Maria had funded it all, or rather her father had in her name. But the vision was hers. She'd spent months planning it, hearing counselors who specialized in domestic abuse and trauma, creating programs for legal aid, job training, housing assistance, everything she wished she'd had when she was trapped. Today was the opening day. 20 women sat in a circle in the main room. Some looked scared, others looked broken, a few looked angry. Maria recognized all of those emotions. She stood in front of them, Sophia on her hip. Her daughter had become part of her story, her symbol of survival. Thank you for coming, Maria began, her voice steady. My name is Maria and I'm a survivor. She told them her story, not the sanitized version from the news, the real story, the fear, the isolation, the moment she realized the man she loved wanted her dead. Some women cried, others nodded in recognition. I know what it's like to feel trapped, Maria said. To think you have nowhere to go, no one who will believe you, no way out, but you do. You have a way out. And this place, she gestured around the room, is here to help you find it. After the meeting, a young woman approached her hesitantly. She was thin, with bruises barely covered by makeup. Is it really possible, the woman whispered, to leave to survive? Maria took her hand gently. Look at me. I was dying on a hospital bed less than 2 years ago. Now I'm here, alive, free, raising my daughter. It's possible. It's hard, but it's possible. The woman's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to start. You already did. You came here. That's the first step. One afternoon, Maria received an unexpected letter. It was from the prison, from Laura Jordan. Maria stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Dear Maria, I know I don't deserve your time or attention. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I need you to know something. I was wrong about everything, about Andrew, about you, about what I thought power and money meant. I wake up every day in the cell and see your face. I see you gasping for air. I see what I did, and I hate myself. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You were right to survive. You were always stronger than I gave you credit for. I hope you and your daughter have a beautiful life. Laura. Maria read the letter twice. Then she folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. She didn't respond. Not because she was angry, but because Laura's guilt was Laura's burden to carry. Maria had carried enough. Forgiveness, she'd learned, didn't mean absolving someone of their crimes. It meant choosing not to let their actions define her future. Laura would live with what she did. But Maria would live free. Andrew sent letters too, many of them. Maria never opened them. She heard through the lawyers that he tried to appeal, failed, tried again, failed again. He would spend the rest of his life in prison. That knowledge didn't make Maria happy, but it made her feel safe. Her daughter would grow up, never knowing the man who tried to kill her mother. And that was enough. 2 years after the trial, Maria stood on a stage at a conference for domestic violence survivors and advocates. Sophia, now a bright, energetic toddler, sat in the front row with Jorge, playing quietly with her toys. "My name is Maria Walker," she said into the microphone, "and I shouldn't be alive." The audience went silent. 2 years ago, my husband tried to murder me while I was giving birth to our daughter. He brought his mistress to my hospital room and they turned off my oxygen. They watched me die. She paused, letting the words settle. But I didn't die, and neither did my daughter. We survived. And I'm here to tell you that survival is not the end of the story, it's the beginning. She talked about Sophia's haven, about the women she'd helped, about the strength she'd found in her own brokenness. "I used to think strength meant never showing pain," Maria said, "never asking for help, never admitting I was scared. But real strength is different. Real strength is saying I'm hurt but I'm still here. Real strength is choosing to heal instead of choosing revenge. Real strength is surviving and then helping others survive too." The audience erupted in applause. When Maria stepped off the stage, her father was waiting with Sophia. "Mama," Sophia ran to her on chubby toddler legs. Maria swept her up, holding her tight. "I'm so proud of you, Mija," Jorge said, his eyes wet. "I learned from the best," Maria replied. That night, Maria tucked Sophia into bed in their own apartment. A beautiful space Maria had chosen herself, decorated with things she loved, filled with light and safety. "Tell me story, Mama," Sophia said sleepily, clutching her stuffed elephant. Maria sat on the edge of the bed, brushing her daughter's curls back. "Once upon a time," she began softly, "there was a woman who thought she was weak. She thought she needed someone else to make her strong. But one day she discovered something amazing." "What?" Sophia whispered. "She discovered that she had been strong all along. She just hadn't known it yet." Sophia's eyes drifted closed. "Like you, Mama." Maria's breath caught. "Yes, baby, like me." She kissed her daughter's forehead and stood quietly, watching Sophia sleep. The woman in the mirror across the room looked back at her. She was no longer the frightened girl who had married Andrew Walker. She was no longer the victim gasping for air on a hospital bed. She was Maria, survivor, mother, advocate, warrior. And she was enough. She had always been enough. 5 years later, Maria stood in the garden of a home she'd bought herself, a modest house with a backyard where Sophia could play. Sophia was 6 now, starting first grade, brilliant and kind and fearless. Jorge visited every Sunday, bringing pastries and stories and unconditional love. Andrew was still in prison, Laura too. Maria no longer thought about them. She thought about the women she'd helped, the lives she'd changed, the strength she'd found. She thought about her daughter's laugh, her father's smile, the peace she'd built from ashes. One evening, as the sun set golden over the garden, Sophia asked, "Mama, what's the most important thing you ever learned?" Maria thought for a moment, watching the light dance through the trees. "That kindness is not weakness," she said finally. "That silence is not submission, and that a woman who survives becomes unstoppable." Sophia nodded solemnly, like she understood. Maybe she did. Maria smiled and pulled her daughter close. "Remember this, baby girl. No matter what life brings you, no matter who tries to break you, you have everything you need inside you already. Strength, courage, love. And if anyone ever tries to make you believe you're powerless, they'll learn the hard way," Sophia finished, grinning. Maria laughed. "Exactly." They sat together as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, mother and daughter, survivors both. And Maria knew with absolute certainty that they would be okay. They already were. Never underestimate a woman who survives. Never underestimate a father who loves. And never believe cruelty goes unanswered. because justice may be patient, but it is always, always watching. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button for more powerful stories of justice, survival, and redemption. Your support keeps these stories coming. Thank you for watching.